are having more seats brought in, so it's a good sign that we don't have enough. Secretary General of the UNWTO and a very, very dear friend of the global travel and tourism community.
Uno de mis mejores amigos de la
Honorable
comunidad.
Ministers and Secretaries of Tourism,
Para todos los
Excellencies,
ministros y
distinguished best
secretarios,
guests,
tienen
friends of the global
excelentes
travel and
sillas,
tourism
amigos
community,
de la
ladies and
comunidad
gentlemen,
global,
as we say in South Africa,
viajera.
all protocols observed.
Todos
It is my
serían los
great
protocolos.
honor
Es
and
un
pleasure to
honor
be the
para
MC
mí
with you for the
tener
next
en
session, for the
MC
next
con
couple
una
of hours.
sesión diferente por las
And I must
próximas
say, it
2
is an
horas.
enormous
Y
honor
también
and
tengo que
blessing to
decir
stand
que
here
es
in front
un
of you.
honor
Why I
excelente
love
para
this
poder
job
estar acá.
is
¿Por qué
because
me
when I
encanta
look
este
around the
trabajo?
room itself,
Porque
and
cuando
Dr.
yo
Riefei
observo
knows,
el
if he gives me
salón
license to a
y veo
microphone,
que
I
las
am going to
personas están
extend
escuchándome y
embarrassing
yo
terms
sé
of
que si me entregan el
endearment.
micrófono voy
I
a
look
pasar
around the
mucho más
room, and
tiempo
as was
del que
said
debo de
earlier in the
quedarme. Yo miro
sessions,
alrededor del
we
salón
don't just love what
y
we
no
do, we
solamente
love the
amamos
people
lo que
with whom we
nosotros
do it.
hacemos, sino que amamos
So
las
with
personas
that,
con las que
I want
trabajamos.
to
Entonces
welcome
con
you
eso
all
quiero
and
darle
really
las
say it is
bienvenidas
a
a
great
todos
honor
y
and
decir
pleasure
que
to
para
have you
mí
all
es un
here.
gran honor y un
None of
placer
us are in
tenerlos
the
a todos.
profession of travel
No
and
todos
tourism.
estamos en la
All of us
profesión
are
del
in the
turismo y
vocation
los
of travel and
viajes, pero
tourism.
todos tenemos como
Because we are
vocación
incredibly
el
blessed to live
turismo
the
y los
lives that we
viajes.
do,
Nosotros estamos
doing what
bendecidos
we
de tener
so
la vida
love,
que nosotros
knowing the
tenemos,
impact that it is
haciendo lo que
having
nosotros
on
amamos
millions
y
and
sabiendo
millions of
el
people around
impacto
the
que
world.
tenemos a
Why I
millones y
don't
millones de
like this
personas
job
alrededor
is
del
because it also
mundo.
comes with the
Lo que no
caveat
me
of being
gusta
the
de este
time
trabajo
police.
es que
So I
sabemos
will
que hay
say
un
to
tiempo
all
en
of
el
the
que
moderators,
finaliza.
to
Entonces yo
all
le
of
voy a
the
pedir a todos
speakers,
los
to all of the
moderadores, a
panelists,
todas las
with
personas
the
que van a
greatest love and
realizar
respect,
presentaciones,
if
a los
you see me
panelistas
get
con
up
mucho
from that chair,
respeto. Si
there
ustedes
is
ven
very
que
good
yo me
mercy
paro
being
de esta
applied in the
silla,
10 meters
quiere
between me
decir
and
que
you.
tenemos un
I
tiempo
welcome
corto
you
para
all
terminar la
today, and I really do.
presentación.
I'm
Les doy la
delighted to be
bienvenida una
here
vez más.
with you
Quiero decir
all.
que estoy
It is a
muy
great
contenta de
pleasure because
encontrarme en este
ultimately we
momento acá.
know
Para
that
mí
we
es un
work in
placer
the
porque
tourism industry, an
últimamente puedo
industry that
decir
is
que todos
absolutely
trabajamos en la industria
transformational.
del turismo,
It
en un turismo
inspires
que está
opportunity, it
transformándose, ¿no?
inspires
Es
understanding,
una
it
inspiración de
inspires unity,
entendimiento,
and most
inspira la
importantly,
unidad, la
we work
equidad
in
y
an
lo más
industry that
importante es que estamos
inspires hope.
trabajando en
It
una
is one that is
industria que
required that we
inspira
join
a la
hands and
esperanza
we
y
join
por eso
resources.
tenemos que
Now, when I use the word
unirnos con
resources, I
nuestros
don't just mean
recursos. Y
funding.
cuando hablo
This
de
is not just
recursos no
about
estoy hablando
financing.
acerca de
Because to
recursos
hold a
financieros,
session at 3 o'clock in
sino
the
que tener en
afternoon
cuenta
in
que toda esta
33
sesión a
degrees
las 3 de la
Medellín, which is a
tarde
magnificent
en una
city,
ciudad que está
after many of
con
you have
unas
had
altas
a very
temperaturas,
large
una
lunch,
ciudad
and I know who was in the
increíble. Sé
prata
que todos
session, so I
ustedes
know who
tuvieron su
also had the
almuerzo,
wine to drink.
sé que todos
So I'm going
ustedes
to keep an
tomaron
eye
algo
on
de
all of
vino,
you,
entonces
but
voy a
we are
poner poner mucha atención en todo. Estoy asegurándome que están despiertos, que tengan mucha energía, que podamos unir todos esos recursos para poder fundamentalmente crear diferencia. Esta tarde nosotros tenemos grandes mentes y espíritus del mundo WSR, OMT. Y todas estas personas le están dando la vida al turismo, están acá para hacer diferencias. Y como dijo el Dr. Reed, y lo ha dicho muchas veces, lo hacemos mucho mejor cuando lo hacemos juntos. Entonces tenemos que empezar a pensar cómo realmente podemos hacer la diferencia en estas metas de desarrollo, cómo podemos tener esos retos, no solamente para obtenerlos, sino también entender cuál es el impacto que vamos a tener. Sin decir nada más, quiero presentar a una persona que en mi mente se ha vuelto el maestro de la industria. Cuando él llegó a la oficina hace unos años atrás, él simplemente dejó la llama, y aquí pueden ver la llama en el espíritu de todos nosotros. Él nos ha dado el permiso para tener no solamente un entendimiento de lo que hacemos, sino en el campo en que lo estamos haciendo. Y voy a decir que él es una de las personas más grandiosas cuando hablamos acerca del turismo global. Dr. Rifai, por favor, le cedo el escenario.
How could anyone say anything after this introduction?
¿Quién puede decir algo después de esta presentación? No estoy seguro de que lo pueda hacer. Si estuvieras en mi lugar, estarías intimidado y muy nervioso. Y también con mucho cuidado de lo que voy a decir. Anita, muchísimas gracias. Tú siempre eres muy amable y me das algo que quizás yo no merezco. Pero sin retrasarme más, vamos a comenzar. Arantxa González, muchas gracias por estar con todos nosotros. Para los que no conocen a Arantxa, Arantxa es un director ejecutivo de ATC, que sería el Centro Internacional de Intercambios. Ya en este momento se encuentra con nosotros, nos ha conectado a todos nosotros y también ha establecido un principio muy importante. El turismo son intercambios, y eso es algo muy, muy importante. Nosotros tenemos administradores de esos intercambios, ellos se encuentran acá con todos nosotros el día de hoy. Entonces, para ustedes que no tienen ninguna duda, la presencia de Arantxa como ejecutiva con nosotros es muy importante, especialmente para esos intercambios, y ella va a estar con nosotros por un largo tiempo. Entonces, para nosotros, ella es un gran ejemplo de cómo las cosas están cambiando. Entonces, muchísimas gracias, Arantxa, por encontrarte acá con nosotros el día de hoy. Dan Kinnigan, no sé qué decir. Todo lo que yo diga quizás no va a ser suficiente, y quizás va a ser un chiste, y va a ser algo difícil. Una vez que yo digo algo, así sea un complemento, él algunas veces se burla de mí. Entonces, simplemente te quiero decir gracias, no puedo decir nada más. Eres un gran amigo, eres un gran ministro del turismo de África del Sur. Tienes un excelente grupo de trabajo especializado en el financiamiento del turismo y el turismo por sí solo. Entonces es importante, y espero conocer todo lo que tienes que decir y tu pensamiento. A todos ustedes, veo unas caras familiares que ya he visto anteriormente y me gustaría hablar acerca de cada uno de ustedes, pero estoy seguro de que ustedes tienen mejores cosas que hacer que escucharme a mí, especialmente después de todo lo que Anita dijo. Señoras y señores y amigos, con millones de personas viajando por el mundo entero, esto se está volviendo algo que no es un chiste. El turismo está sufriendo síntomas muy serios, está creciendo muy rápido, se está volviendo muy impactante y tiene diferentes ramificaciones, y está creciendo muy rápido. El crecimiento del turismo ha sido increíble por los últimos 40 y 60 años, y yo creo que la capacidad de la sociedad humana hace parte y es un poco limitado de ese crecimiento. Entonces, por eso, el día de hoy nosotros vemos ese impacto, vemos que las personas simplemente llegan a las playas a acostarse, perezosos, más o menos desnudos en algunas ocasiones, tomándose una cerveza, pero eso no es el turismo. Desafortunadamente tenemos poco entendimiento de lo que realmente es el turismo, y yo voy a darles a ustedes algunos ejemplos y espero que puedan conectarse con mis ejemplos y que me entiendan lo que quiero decir el día de hoy. Desde el 2003, UNWTO ha sido parte de mi vida, y yo voy a decir que he sido la persona encargada ya por 13 años, sería el ejecutivo de las Naciones Unidas. Esta reunión se hace 2 veces al año. Recuerdo la primera vez que fui a esa reunión. Obviamente todos los agentes me estaban mirando a mí y decían, ¿qué es lo que está haciendo él? Ellos tenían una gran sonrisa, pero decíamos turismo, hablábamos acerca de la industria, de la agricultura, de labor, de salud. Pero ¿qué tiene que ver turismo con todo lo que estamos haciendo? Y era para mí un gran reto poder explicar hasta a mis propios colegas, decirles, turismo es un intercambio, es un desarrollo, es empleo, es interacción. Como lo dije anteriormente, es un cambio. Y ese fue el reto que yo tuve con mis colegas y me tomó más o menos 2 años para que ellos entendieran el eco de mis sentimientos. Entonces, en este momento tenemos conexión con nuevas agencias que hacen parte de la Asamblea General y hacen cosas que antes no pensábamos que podíamos hacer. Entonces, nuestro reto es poder capacitar y entrenar y ayudarles a cambiar la perspectiva. Quizás podamos cambiar el mundo, no estoy seguro de que se pueda hacer. Quizás el término por sí solo tenga mucha magia y que se conecte con otros métodos, pero es importante para todos nosotros si cambiamos el término o no. Yo estoy usando turismo y no viajeros para que las personas empiecen a entender, pero el punto no es solamente que entienda, necesitamos asegurarnos que las personas comprendan que el turismo es un desarrollo. ¿Y por qué? Porque si no lo hacemos, si no nos conectamos con las personas como Alicia González, la cual me siento muy orgulloso de que se encuentre el día de hoy. Nosotros tuvimos un memorando de un acuerdo de entendimiento que se va a publicar. Ella lo tiene en este momento en sus manos y quizás no voy a hablar acerca de eso porque no quiero crear un impacto acerca de la publicación que se va a realizar. Ella se encuentra muy orgullosa de su artículo y yo también estoy muy orgulloso, pero si no hacemos eso nosotros vamos a tener un riesgo de no atraer suficiente atracción y no vamos a poder tener los beneficios de esta industria tan grandiosa como es el viaje y el turismo. ¿Por qué estamos diciendo todo esto? Hay muchos eventos que están pasando en el mundo y necesitamos estar con todos ellos. Al final de este mes, las Naciones Unidas y la Asamblea General va a aprobar los nuevos desarrollos, cursos de nuevos desarrollos que va a estar desde el 2015 hasta el 2017. Por el primer momento en la vida vamos a poder decir que estamos en 3 de las metas de turismo, de las metas que se encuentran en la parte más importante de la lista. Entonces, para nosotros es un gran logro. Pero ¿cuáles son los retos? ¿Qué vamos a hacer después que cumplamos con esas metas? Tenemos que medir, tenemos que monitorear, tenemos que ver el impacto, tenemos que crear algunos mecanismos para poder abordar todos esos problemas. Y me parece que es un reto y no estoy seguro de que la industria esté lista para este reto. Hace unas semanas tuvimos una conferencia muy importante acerca de la financiación del desarrollo del turismo. De la mejor manera que pudimos abordamos estas reuniones. Nos puso también bajo algunas responsabilidades. Mis amigos, el turismo debe de verse como el mejor trabajo creado en el mundo, no después del 2011, ni después de que las estadísticas se hayan observado en el mundo, viendo el impacto que hemos tenido. Y yo trabajo con muchas personas, estoy muy contento de muchos, algunos de los que realizan este tipo de estudios y de investigaciones que vamos a presentar en las próximas reuniones de turismo para poder mostrarles a ustedes cuáles son esos reportes, esos registros que pueden demostrar que el turismo ha crecido y no solamente crecido, sino que está entregando nuevo empleo a muchas personas. En mi mente, que es muy simple, yo no soy un experto de turismo, pero si ustedes construyen un hotel y ese hotel entrega más de menos 100 trabajos o 140,000 trabajos, en realidad,
those that provide food to the hotel, those that provide the services, those that provide the maintenance, the taxi drivers that are carrying the passengers back and forth, the accountants, the lawyers, everybody that is connected to the business of this hotel that's employing 100 people. So you can imagine how labor intensive it is. It's an excellent sector for young people to enter the labor market. We have the fastest turnover of jobs in the travel and tourism industry. It's not good news for our professionals in the industry because many people that study tourism or enter the job of tourism, in less than a year or two, they move into other sectors. But for the society at large, this is okay, this is fine. We're helping people enter the labor market and acquire the needed skills. People, when they work in a hotel or in an agency or in a service or in a museum, they learn how to deal with people, they learn how to smile, they learn how to how to solve problems, they learn how to adjust to different cultures. It's an excellent entry for young people to the labor market. Thirdly, it's an excellent entry point for women and youth. It lends itself so naturally to these two vulnerable categories. Last but not least, it is a job where people live. You don't have to migrate for that job. It creates jobs where attractions are and where imagination and innovation and development and investment in tourism takes place. So people in the countryside can stay in the countryside and pride themselves by showing off of how beautiful this place is and provide services to the visitors of this place. Tourism also is an excellent trade booster, and I don't want to talk about this because I know that Arantxa will talk about this, but I just want to emphasize the fact of the developing country and the connection of tourism. Now, we use the figure, and I think it's correct so far, that 6% of total trade in the world is from travel and tourism. But when it comes to trade and services, it's 30%. 30% of world trade and services. When it comes to developing countries, it's 45% of trade and services. So you can imagine the size of the impact on the economy that it's taken. In spite of all this, and that's why we're meeting here today, I made the case, and now I want to say why is this case now causing a challenge. 0.78% only of aid for trade is dedicated to tourism. Less than 1%. 0.7%. 0.78% only. Why? Because people don't take us seriously. Because we have not done our homework right. When it comes to official development assistance, ODA, it's even worse. It's 0.097. 0.01. 1/10 of 1% is official development assistance. This is a reflection of our failure to address the world and to make them understand what the message is. That's exactly why we're here. But beyond this and that, and under the leadership of Minister of Tourism of South Africa, we've also discovered in the working group that there are needs beyond this also, not just to raise awareness and to increase the kind of financing to tourism altogether. The financial institutions and the banking systems that we have in place in the world do not understand how to finance projects and how to finance investments in tourism. They don't have enough experience and they don't have enough personnel that know how to give a loan. We can't give guarantees to loan. Our industry is 85% small and medium sizes, yet these are having great difficulties in accessing the credit that is available so easily to other sectors. These are, my dear friends, some of the challenges that are ahead of us. I'm going to stop at this point because I'm truly looking forward to the very valuable discussions that we have. My only sad part is that I may not enjoy the benefit of having to listen to all of you because I may have to slip so quietly from behind in a little while to attend another group meeting and also address them in a different topic and in a different way. If I do that, please don't look at me, don't embarrass me because I feel guilty already. But I will be at least here to hear you, Arantxa, and the Minister. And I'm looking forward to your deliberation. Thank you so much for being with us, and muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Rifai. And I must say, one thing I love about Dr. Rifai, amongst many things I love about Dr. Rifai, this is very confessional I'm feeling, is that he knows who the bosses are, because between his beautiful wife, Nisreen, Emmy is guardian angel, and quite honestly, yourself being here, madam, he knows that it's the women around him who run his life, and so he responds when he needs to. But in that sense, I think what's really important and what Dr. Rifai has brought to all of our lives is recognizing the very human component of what we do. And what's lovely about it is recognizing that our greatest resource is not the budgets, it's not the funding, it's not the credit that we have, it's our relationships. And if you want to build a strong relationship, you have to understand what's important to the other person so that they understand you care to help them be stronger. That is exactly what we have in Ms. Gonzalez being with here today, because she's going to be the one who's going to tell us what does it really take to be able to make the difference that we want to make. But to be able to do that, we need to understand from you, madam, what do we need to do to show you that we care so that you can deliver, and in doing so, we deliver. Please.
Well, it's a bit difficult to come after Talib that so eloquently has set the scene for the discussion today. The starting point of this discussion is one, that tourism is international trade. Someone said yesterday, how do we call tourism? We are not clear about how to define it. For me, it's very simple. International tourism is international trade. The second very clear fact we have in front of us is that this form of international trade has an enormous potential to generate growth, to create jobs, and to reduce poverty. This is why the United Nations and the World Trade Organization, the two parents of the International Trade Center, care about tourism as a special form of international trade. So I'm going to say it not just in English, I'm going to say it in Spanish. El turismo es comercio internacional que genera crecimiento, empleo y desarrollo. I'm going to say it in French. Le tourisme, c'est une forme de commerce international génératrice d'emplois, de croissance et de réduction de la pauvreté. I can't say it, unfortunately, in Chinese, in Russian, and etc. I'm working on it, so for next time you'll hear me say that. We have to say this loud and clear, because we otherwise are missing a huge opportunity. The third thing we know is that financing development requires three components. This is what we discussed in Addis Ababa recently. It requires international solidarity. We call it development aid. I like the word solidarity better because it speaks of benefits to those who give and those who benefit from it. It's of mutual interest. The second way to finance reduction of poverty in this world is mobilizing domestic resources a bit more efficiently than we've done up until now. This means collecting taxes a little bit better, making sure that illicit flows are tackled. The third way, though, and it's a very important way, it's better leveraging the power of the private sector. Okay, so out of these three ingredients, we know that international development aid, the international solidarity part, it's not really flowing to tourism. We heard the figures from Talib. I'm not going to repeat them. I think they are pretty clear. I think we have to do a little bit of a better job in understanding why, for an industry that is generating so much growth, for an industry that is responsible for so many jobs, for an industry we can count on to reduce poverty, we should make sure there is a bit more development aid flowing into this sector. Now, in my mind, I'll give you the explanation that I would use, and maybe we can have a bit of a discussion later on, but the status quo does not ensure that tourism is inclusive. And tourism has to be inclusive to have its maximum impact. Foreign investors will not automatically invest in developing backward linkages to food, to beverages, to horticulture, to arts and crafts. And countries, frankly, governments, may be wary of promoting such linkages too volubly for fear of dissuading potential investors. So in my view, development aid has two roles to play in tourism. One is to catalyze the maximum inclusiveness of tourism, catalyzing inclusiveness. The second, in my view, big objective of fostering, on putting more international solidarity to tourism is to maximize the interventions of the private sector, is to leverage the power of the private sector. Now, we have a bit of a perception problem, and we have to change this perception problem. And I fully agree with Talib that we have a bit of homework to do there. So what should we do? I think we have to make sure we define strategic priorities. We make sure that these priorities are turned into actionable agenda points with effective, with responsive, and with committed governance structures and processes that will support tourism. And in these efforts, we have to fully embark the private sector, and we have to fully embark civil society and all other stakeholders. Everyone has to be around the table. Now, in setting those agendas, we also have to be realistic. You know, it's not a pie in the sky. We have to settle for things we can deliver. What are the things that we can deliver seen from the International Trade Center? Let me give you 6 things that I think we can and should deliver. Think number 1, think tourism from the perspective of a value chain. A value chain is complex. The tourism value chain is complex. This is why what we have done, UNWTO and the International Trade Center, is put together done a bit of homework in explaining the complexity of these value chains, but also in making sure we also give some answers to how to address this complexity. We need to make sure the trade policy community is very important to this endeavor. The trade policy community needs to think about tourism not just as a line in the schedule on trading services called hospitality. They need to think about transport. They need to think about finance. They need to think about insurance. They need to think about infrastructure. They need to think about construction, water, sanitation, and the list goes on. They also need to think about investment and visa policies. They also need to think about standards for food. So as you can see, we need to make sure the trade community understands a little bit better the challenges of the tourism sector in order to have trade policies that are supportive of tourism. And it's really interesting to see how countries like Peru, for example, have put the two under the same roof and with the same mouth, tourism and trade. Second, unlocking the tourism potential requires strategies that go beyond tourism master plans. There are things that need to be, actions that need to be identified for governments, for companies, for the tourism business environment, what we call tourism export strategies. So not just about the piece that the tourism sector has to deliver, but an all-encompassing strategy. It's something that we've developed in Myanmar, Kyrgyzstan, and Palestine, to give you an example, and we find it is an intelligent way to start a conversation going in the country. Third, we need better data and better analysis. You know, I love saying from Sheryl Sandberg. She says, what you don't know, you don't care. But once you know, you cannot but care. So data, analysis. The UNWTO has been doing an excellent job at collecting data. WTTC collects data. It's greatly useful. We are going to be contributing putting a little bit of a contribution here. We have a series of studies looking at non-tariff barriers to trading goods. We are going to expand it to looking at non-tariff barriers to trade in tourism services. 4, we need reinforced specialized institutions supporting small and medium enterprises. SMEs are the largest constituency to the tourism sector. So we need institutions that are going to help us, strong institutions that are going to help us tap into the potential of the small and medium enterprises. We need coalition of services industries. We need to federate the services sector. Sometimes it's very dispersed, it doesn't have a voice. It needs to have a voice. We've supported the Philippines, we've supported St. Lucia in creating a coalition of services industries. They now have a voice, they now have a say. 5th, I'm getting close to the end, Anita. Tourism is about inclusiveness and retention of local value added. I said it yesterday, tourism cannot be an island in an economy. Tourism has to permeate the entire economy. Inclusiveness means thinking women, thinking youth, thinking rural communities, thinking refugee communities, displaced communities, thinking poor communities, why not? Indigenous communities. We have to think in an inclusive manner. And two, we need to make sure we retain more of local value added. This is what we are planning on doing in working together with UNWTO in Madagascar. And I really would like to notice the presence of the Madagascar tourism minister, which together with his colleague, the trade minister, will be instrumental in this. We are going to be doing the same thing in the Seychelles. There is a huge opportunity to be tapped in this sector. Finally, we need to conduct joint advocacy on the importance of tourism. We've done this in the CITES conference, in the LDC conference, in the LLDC conference. Let me give you 3 moments when I think we can do this together in the coming weeks. One is in the upcoming WTO Ministerial Conference, where I invite those in the room that are going to be sitting in the room making the decisions to make sure tourism is flagged as a bit of a priority to the trade policy community given its trade potential. 2, it's in the discussions to replenish the enhanced integrated framework. We have the chair of the board in the person of Ambassador Stevens sitting with us. We'll hear, I'm sure, from you today, but we have an opportunity to also make sure that least developed countries and tourism, they go together, and they should therefore make sure tourism is properly financed. 3, we will put our own contribution in our flagship event, the World Export Development Forum taking place in Qatar this October, where we have devoted a session to the issue of tourism. Anita, I hope that I've given the room enough of food for thought to keep the ball rolling. I'll be eager to listen to comments and observations that our colleagues would have. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Ms. Gonzalez. And what's lovely is that Ms. Gonzalez has very kindly taken the spirit of what Dr. Rifai seeded up front and saying that the misperceptions and the misconceptions is because we need to change the narrative. Ms. Gonzalez has kindly given us now the language to recognize if we want to gain credibility in our sector, these are the credible elements we need to focus on as levers. I would now like to introduce to the stage and to ask to take the podium the only other person in the room who has more of a power on me than Dr. Rifai. And it's only because he has in his hands, not my heart, but my residency in South Africa. Can I please introduce Dr. Derek Honeycomb, the Honorable Minister of Tourism of South Africa, who's going to give a South African perspective. Sir.
Thank you, Anita, and hello, Secretary General and ministers and everybody here, all the very important people who are here. You know, Anita, that was really underhanded, you know. She has to give me respect because I hold the power. She is completely in love with Taleb. She can't be objective about him. It's completely subjective. She loves the man. Thank you very much, Arantxa, also for Ms. Gonzalez for I really picked up lots in what you presented here, and I think that gives this whole General Assembly value. We're not sitting here just going through motions, etc. We actually learn from each other, and we go back to our own countries enriched, thinking, aha, got to do that thing. Aha, we're not getting it quite right in that area. Aha, I now understand better what we're trying to deal with. Very important. Thanks so much for that. I've been asked to speak a little bit about South Africa's experience in ODA or in managing development assistance, etc. Taleb, you may go. Thank you so much for at least hearing me compliment you. He says I get him back for whatever he gives me. I do. But just like Anita, I love the man. Everybody loves the man. Bye-bye, Taleb. I'm going to share with you not just some of the South African experience, but just share with you some of my thoughts as well. But I think the first thing is, you know, we're now talking about tourism and tourism finance for development, but it's about tourism as a tool for development, essentially. We've just come from a session where we spoke about tourism as a tool for peace. The notions of development and peace are inseparable. There is simply no peace. It's not tourism that brings peace. It helps a great deal, but there is no peace without development, no lasting peace without development, and there's really no development unless we have peace. So they're two sides of the same coin. Tourism can help in both of those two sides of the coin. So let me start off with, let me just, again, as a context. We all want development. We no longer speak about growth. Even the World Bank doesn't just, on IMF, they don't just speak about growth. It's growth and development. So it's inclusive growth, it's meaningful growth, it's sustained growth. Those things are very important. But the fact of the matter is, no real impactful development and sustainable development can take place in an ailing economy either. So we've got to get our economic policies right, because at the end of the day, that's the source of revenue. That's the revenue that helps you do the right things in order to address the developmental challenges of your country. So growth and development, just reinforcing what we all know, development in the absence of growth is restrained. Let's face it. So back to tourism. Tourism can indeed help achieve that growth. But one of the distinguishing features of tourism is that almost built into the tourism sector is a developmental component of it, almost intrinsic to tourism. Why do I say that? It is an extremely labor-intensive sector. So it doesn't matter how you approach tourism. And of course, we want to promote sustainable tourism, responsible tourism, ethically sound tourism. All of those things are very important. But any kind of tourism actually translates into jobs. And so, as its importance to a developing economy should not be underrated. The other thing about tourism, just before I get to some of the financing instruments and considerations, the other thing about tourism, although on the one hand it's quite vulnerable, we've seen that with the impact of Ebola. We saw that some countries get affected by volcanic ash. We see it. So there's a vulnerability, but at the same time, the paradox is there's a resilience. So tourism tends to, certainly in our country, even with in the midst of the economic crisis of the late 80s, tourism grew in our country. What do we see today, even with the downturn of the world economic growth? Tourism exceeds that. Or rather, the numbers of travelers are way beyond what one would expect in a world where the economy is under strain. The other thing is, talking again about the vulnerabilities of economies, commodities. We've seen what is happening with commodity prices right now. Countries that are dependent on oil, not every country has oil, but countries dependent on oil are hit hard. Countries that have minerals, like we have gold and platinum and all sorts of things, are hit hard when there is a commodity crash. But not every country has those minerals. Thirdly, agricultural potential. Vulnerable, yes. When there's countries that are producing maize and suddenly there's a surplus of maize production in the United States, prices come down, countries are vulnerable. Not every country has agricultural potential. The one thing, and this is the end of my long preamble, every country in the world has some tourism potential. I challenge you to point to one country in the world that you say, no, that one has no tourism potential. It doesn't exist. Every country has something of tourism value. Every country has something that is an attractor. So that is one thing that every single country has. That is my colleague from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He thought he was whispering, but that's because he's got the earphone on. Welcome, Minister. By the way, just as a little by the way, some of you, you don't really know Africa, other than the African people here. And why do I say that? No, of course you do, but the rest of the world does not. When there was an Ebola outbreak in West Africa, the entire African continent was deemed to be risky, dangerous. It did not matter, some of you who are based in Madrid, closer to the epicenter of Ebola, closer than South Africa. But there was a warning, don't go to South Africa. Warnings, don't go to Kenya. Don't go to the DRC. Yet we are much further from the place where this disease broke out. Anyway, so you don't know Africa. Of course, you do not know the Democratic Republic of Congo. Wow, that is a beautiful country. Let me tell you, that is a beautiful country, but all countries in the world have their own beauty. We should never forget that. What Congo has, the Democratic Republic of Congo, as many countries on the African continent, is untapped potential. It's the African continent is the one continent where, and it applies to agriculture as well, but where the potential of tourism is yet grossly unmined, undeveloped. And so because people don't yet discover it, there is an infrastructure challenge, we're addressing those challenges. So, South Africa. When we achieved democracy about 21 years ago, of course it was something to celebrate. We emerged after, many, many years of injustice and of conflict and of a divided society. I'm not going to tell you about that transition to democracy and to peace and to freedom, etc., but to say there was an avalanche of donor assistance offered to South Africa. Everybody was so happy and everybody wanted to support post-apartheid development in South Africa. There'll be an avalanche of overseas development assistance and donor support to Colombia very soon, if it's not already happening. I'm sure it is already happening, because everybody wants to celebrate and support countries that have gone through difficulties and that have achieved peace. Everyone wants to support that, but it comes with its own challenges, and this is what this topic really is about. So we had an influx of assistance from various international partners. Gee, I've got to look at my own watch. I'm sorry about that, but there's so much to share. One thing that we had to do is to say, how do you manage this influx? How do you take advantage of it? How do you manage it? We prepared a policy framework, which is obviously available to you, called the Policy Framework and Procedural Guidelines for the Management of Official Development Assistance. Repeat after me. No, it's a framework, and a very important framework, but it speaks about both the kind of assistance, the assistance offered by South Africa to neighboring countries, and assistance that flows into South Africa from donor agencies from all over the world. But a primary consideration for South Africa, and I think for all other countries, is that, as you enter this minefield, as you try to manage this minefield, especially where you sometimes have donor agencies literally tripping over each other, you've got to be clear about what your own country's interests are. You've got to say, this is our agenda, do it quite unashamedly, and to say that whatever you're offering, we have to be in the driving seat. We want to take advantage of what you're offering, but we have to be in the driving seat. Not in any arrogant way, because we don't have the monopoly of wisdom, no country in the world. Extract the knowledge from agencies from all over the world. If I may say, what is this evil, what is it called, the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank, and we love to hate them. But the best that we got out of the World Bank in South Africa was not finance. The best that we got from the World Bank was knowledge, was experience in having dealt with similar challenges elsewhere in the world. Don't underrate that. None of us should be arrogant about our challenges. Although they might be slightly unique to us, they are not that unique. We can learn lessons from all over the world. South Africa is also a signatory, terrible, I can go on and on. South Africa is a signatory to the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness and the Accra Agenda for Action. But my little bit of advice to you is, find the balance between, when we talk about define your own agenda, it's important. That's the first thing, define your own agenda. What is it that you want to do? What is your developmental program? First and foremost, mobilize your own resources, as you said, to finance your development program. Otherwise, you're just at the mercy of other donors, and you become a begging country. None of us want to be a begging country. But find the balance, and be nuanced about it. So, there's this argument of demand versus supply versus demand. aid and development programs should definitely not be supply-driven. It shouldn't be because I'm a foundation and I want that, therefore find me space to do that. It should be responding to the real needs of the population in your country, but find the balance. What do I mean by that? Take advantage of the supplies. I honestly believe we sometimes love to hate agencies, etc. I don't believe there's a single agency without or most agencies. 99% have well-meaning people there who are trying to do good. Examine what they have to offer. It's in your country's interest. And see what you can extract from those agencies within your own developmental framework. Just reinforcing what has already been said. Development finance, ODA, cannot be a substitute for robust investment by ourselves into our sector, namely tourism. We are talking about tourism. So first and foremost, we have to create the conditions which will facilitate, without any overseas development assistance, which will facilitate investment. And it's policy frameworks largely that will do that. No country is likely to invest in another country, or not just countries. No investor will go to a country if there is a climate of gross uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Why should you put your billions into that country if you are unsure whether you can actually extract some kind of return out of your billions? Let's face it, investors want return on the investment. Governments have to create environments conducive to attracting investment. We have to use our instruments as government to unleash and unlock further investment then. So we've got to be clear, essentially in the tourism sector, it's about partnership. It's about partnership between government and the private sector. Here we're talking about partnerships between governments and sometimes the private sector and donor agencies. It's about partnerships. But the role of the state versus the role of the industry as a partner in development, as a partner in economic growth, but the respective roles need to be clearly defined so that we don't intrude into each other's territory. So we must know as governments, ministers who are here, what is our responsibility as government? And what can we do to unlock the great potential of investors and the private sector? I think that's very important. But we can't be worlds apart. We can't pretend as governments that we will just do X, Y, Z and we hope that investment will follow. We've got to be engaging with our partners. It's not just about a nice slogan called a partnership. I'm going to conclude. But I have to say, I have to support you on your support, your institutional support to small businesses, to SMMEs. Tourism is basically, although we have big hotel groups, there are thousands in every country, thousands and thousands and thousands of small businesses. They could be small B&Bs, they could be homestays, somebody offering a room in their home. It could be a tour operator, a small tour operator, a tour guide, a taxi operator. There's a huge value chain of thousands of small businesses. We must give institutional support to small business, I agree. So I've got to touch on Colombia. I think this is the most fascinating, fantastic country. Are there any Colombians here? Oh, I see, there's somewhere else. This is an inspiring country. This is a pioneering country. This city I used to call it Medellín. Double L, you pronounce it L. Now I'm told it's Medellín, right? Medellín, 2013, the most innovative city in the world. What did I do yesterday? I've got to share this with you. My wife and I took day before yesterday. We took the metro bus. We took it to the beginning of a cable car. We hopped off the bus on our own. We didn't have any bodyguards with us, by the way, or even a tour operator. We took the bus to there. We hopped onto a cable car. We sailed over Barrio Santo Domingo. And I heard the story afterwards, which is the first case in point. Firstly, what you're doing there as an integrated transport system is great for tourism, it's great for development, and we can't separate tourism from development. So what you're doing there is you're opening up a plethora of opportunities for small operators in that dense settlement, if you like. I don't know what you call a barrio here. Some countries, they call them things like slums. It's not a slum, it's part of the city. And there's a vibrance there, and there are people singing and dancing and wonderful people. A place where 20 years ago, it was riddled with violence. You could not walk in safety there. I promise you, I would get off that cable car today, and I would walk on my own. So my advice to Colombians, because I noticed there are a few of you here, you undersell your own country. We were told by people, I'm sorry I'm going on, we were told by some people you cannot walk in safety in Medellín. That is untrue. I don't feel that. Stop saying that to people. Promote what you are, be proud of what you're doing. It's fantastic, it is unbelievable. You don't even realize how fantastic and inspiring it is. So in conclusion, no one owes us anything. Whether you're the poorest country in the world, you're not owed anything. Secondly, do what you need to attract investment, whatever you need to do. Thirdly, take advantage of available resources. Take advantage, but define your own agenda. And on that note, I conclude, having gone way over my time. Thank you.
Bye, donkey, Minister Honeycomb. I must say, what's lovely about what Minister Honeycomb has brought in is a dimension of, we don't want tourism at any cost. If it costs our countries, the people's pride and their sense of purpose, we don't want the development, because we're going to actually sell our souls in the process of trying to build in all of the value of tourism. Admittedly, I had to laugh though, because when you were going on to your little segue about what we did not get from the World Bank was, knowing that we have a very dear friend from the World Bank in the room who happens to be Australian, I was sure you were going to say, what we did not get from the World Bank was good rugby. And I thought, as a South African with a major event happening in 3 days' time, that I know is going to be a rivalry in the room. But I'd like to ask you all, as we're about to shift gears, to please thank our opening speakers for really setting a fantastic scene, giving us a great dimension, and being with us today. Excellent. We are now going to shift gears, and I'm going to put huge pressure of productivity and time on our two great moderators who are going to lead two exceptional panels through. Our first panel is going to be led by a very dear friend within the UNWTO family. Zaritza is the representative of the UNWTO of the United Nations in Geneva. She's based there. She is still very much within our hearts, whether we're in Madrid or elsewhere. Please, madam, you take the chair. And we have with her on the actual panel itself, we have Ambassador Yvette Stevens, the chair of Enhanced Integrated Framework, the board itself. Please, madam. We also have a very, very special within the UNWTO family, Ambassador Doe, who is the chair of the STEP Foundation, which is one of the greatest engines of tourism development that we are very blessed to have, and she being the absolute godmother of that itself. We have, representing the Australian rugby team and the World Bank all in one, Mr. John Perote, the global lead of tourism, trade and competitiveness of global practice from the World Bank Group. Sir, thank you very much. And we have Ms. Maria Gripani, the member of the European Parliament, former Minister of SMEs, Business Environment and Tourism of Romania itself. Thank you very much. Zaritza, over to you. Enjoy your panel, and thank you all.
Oh, speak English, right?
We can speak
We don't need that. Yes. Okay.
No.
Good.
Is everybody speaking English?
Yeah.
We have translation French and Spanish.
Yeah, English.
Good afternoon. I think we're going to be obliged to be super efficient because we had great speakers, very inspiring speeches, and a lot has been said. However, I think that each of the panels we have here is going to be even more inspirational because we are going to go into practical or real opportunities on the ground in various types of countries. Let me first start to introduce you to Ambassador Stevens, that is the chairman of the Enhanced Integrated Framework, an aid for trade instrument. And I will not enclose more than that I think tourism has a big space there. Ambassador?
Yes, well, let me start by thanking UNWTO for recognizing the Enhanced Integrated Framework. the Enhanced Integrated Framework is a multi-donor program and partnership between 48 LDCs and 3 recently qualified, graduated LDCs, 23 donors, and 8 international agencies. It provides financial and technical assistance to the least developed countries in 3 areas, actually. The first area is in putting together a coordinated strategy for trade. The diagnostic trade integration studies provide the priorities that the country need to improve trade, and this also leads to a matrix which determines the priorities for the given countries in terms of trade issues. Now, the second part of it is that it also creates within the LDCs a capacity for handling trade issues, for cooperation, and for coordination of trade issues. The third part that is covered by the EIF is catalytic projects, in fact, which could consist of, what is called the Tier 2 projects, which could consist of feasibility studies. It could also consist on seed money to develop activities in the trade sector that could be used as a catalyst to leverage funds for trade-related development activities. I am stressing this because I think the point has been raised that the monies that are made available, for instance, under Tier 2 projects, which is a maximum of $3 million, people comment that this is too small, but I think the main objective of this is that because many of the LDCs have areas which need to be developed in order to be able to attract that additional financing, this money is to be used precisely for that. And we spoke about policies, for instance. I mean, some of the LDCs, and indeed not only LDCs, but some countries do not have the trade policies in place. And if, as I think was mentioned recently, just now, if these trade policies are not in place, if the system is not there at the country level, no investor is going to come and pour money without the assurance that certain mechanisms are in place. So this is very important. And we have been, and the EIF has been able to support 131 projects, totaling $143 million. Of these, 95 projects are supporting trade policy capacity building, and 36 are helping to address specific constraints to trade, including in tourism. 41 analytical studies have been undertaken to identify priority areas for action, and trade is integrated in the national development plans of 32 countries. This is extremely important. It is amazing that when the national development programs are being set up, I think maybe for some of the reasons which we have heard about tourism not being considered to be an essential part of development, that many of these are set up without tourism within the national development plan itself, and without even trade not having the place it deserves within the national programs. So this is something that the EIF has been able to promote, and again, with the assistance of the EIF, many countries have developed their trade sectors, including tourism in some countries.
Thank you very much. Just to mention that you will find outside in the room a key research we are undertaking with the EIF, because the EIF is going into the phase 2, starting in 2016 for the next 5 years. And UNWTO is on the board. We have the pleasure to be chaired by Madame. So we are very committed to promote the EIF to our constituency. Madame Do, Ambassador, I think that almost no one in the room do not know you. Chairman of the STEP Foundation, you are going to explain us how sustainable tourism for elimination of poverty has grown and the work you have done to become an international organization, please. Thank you.
initiative was launched by UNWTO 2002 in South Africa and in Johannesburg. And I saw a really huge room full of ministers and tourism-related people. There was excitement. So I came back to Korea in 2002 that we won FIFA World Cup. We did pretty good. So the whole country was in a good mood. So I said, what about if we do something for tourism industry, helping? So government decided to give me. They said, how much do you want? I said, I don't know, about 5 million. They go, oh, of course. So I said, well, I should have 10 million instead of 5 million. But anyway, that's how it started 2002, but with the absolute partnership with the UNWTO. So we are under umbrella of UNWTO. For 14 years, for those who were in the morning meeting, perhaps you ran into this little brochure. It's a very simple brochure. It says we have done, past 10 years, 149 projects, 40 countries. Of course, the funding was done between Korean government, Korean industries, and UNWTO in Italy, Spain, the SNV of Netherlands, GTZ of Germany, with all these partners. So that has grown. And then 2 years ago, we wanted to transform this to international organization. And again, UNWTO General Assembly approved it 2 years ago in Victoria Falls General Assembly, 20th Assembly. So that's having grown, and it has and Korean government is doing last pitch of completing ratification. I'm not here to sell this international organization, but it's something truly grown out of sustainable tourism, and the key is poverty elimination. And one thing I can be very, very proud of saying is I know how to get rid of poverty, because I was born into a country, $69 per capita income, no shoes, no nothing. We had to to get a piece of chocolate. I mean, that was something we would never had. But look at Korea, $25,000 per capita income, and for 40 years. And do we have coals and diamonds like South Africa? Do we have oils? No, we have no natural resources, nothing. We don't have no oil, no gas. But where we are now, I'm sure you carry Samsung, telephone, and LG. Like a lot of people think it's made in Japan, because people do not think Koreans are good enough to make, they still think of us as Korean War, right? So anyway, so that's why I want to say, my friends, I said, if Koreans could do it, why not you? Why not you? So that's why Poverty Alleviation International Organization is going to be real thing. It's going to be good thing. Anybody, everybody, any country can pitch in. There's no excuse not to pitch in of poverty alleviation. That's where international organization is based on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Do. I think that the universality of the Sustainable Development Goals will allow everybody to participate in this effort. We have the only one man in our panel, and it's a gender unbalance. We are going to scream. John Perrottet from the World Bank. I think that we have been engaged at various levels since many years, UNWTO and the World Bank, and I think that we are taking a direction that I think is quite encouraging, and in which the countries have a big stake and can benefit a lot. So we really would be enchanted to hear from you and to tell us what are the directions the World Bank is taking these days.
Thanks very much, Zritza. I'm very disappointed with the gender imbalance. Actually, I'm not disappointed at all. It's a fantastic position to talk from.
Don't feel uncomfortable.
And I'm very intimidated, though, by the reference to rugby, which I will deal with, perhaps offline, as they say. it'll take up all the time. Look, many of you know that the World Bank is involved in tourism. It's not a particularly huge part of the global portfolio of the agency. The World Bank is, a big institution. Tourism, in fact, one of my jobs over the last year is to work out just how much money we do have in tourism. And it took like a year to find out. And the reason is we don't tag any of our projects as simply tourism projects. What I can tell you is that it's less than about $5 billion. And of a $250 billion portfolio, it's a very small proportion, pretty much in line with the numbers that you heard from the Secretary General earlier. A lot of that money, maybe almost $3 billion of it, goes to governments for infrastructure-related things that have to do with tourism. About another $1 billion goes directly into the private sector, investing in hotels and tourism-related infrastructure, airlines, airports, port facilities, etc. And in addition to that, there is a very large knowledge portfolio of advisory work. When I say very large, it's multiple projects, but it's not a huge piece of money on the balance sheet, as you would imagine. The big money in the bank in tourism is in lending to those fixed assets, whether they're roads or airports or restoring cultural heritage facilities, etc. Part of the message that I want to give you here is that this money in the bank is actually quite hidden. It's hard to find. It doesn't leap out at you and say, oh, here's the program. And the reason for that is that it's kind of buried in several different departments. In some cases, it's purposely hidden. And one of the reasons it's purposely hidden is because of this image issue that tourism has. And this pervades all sorts of institutions, including our own. It's also partly the result of the kind of cross-cutting nature of the industry, because tourism is everything as we know. It's that all-inclusive. It's an airport today, it's a road tomorrow, it's a sanitation scheme in a city that depends on tourism. All of that makes it very difficult to say, well, this is actually a tourism project. And this is a very important point, because it goes to the question of how to get the money. And I know many of you are in this room because you want to know how much money is there and how do I get my hands on it. And I've spent a lot of my professional career helping people actually approach banks and do the transactions with them. So I have a little bit of an idea how to do that from a consumer's point of view, and I'm going to give you some suggestions on how to do that. But one thing you do need to know is to understand who decides where that money is spent. And it's not me, unfortunately. As much as I really like writing checks, that is not my job. It is definitely a long way from my job. I'm a kind of technical expert in the bank. There's a few of us, maybe 15 or 20. There's 300 or 400 people that actually do work on tourism projects, not full-time by any means. So there's a massive range of knowledge, and I'm very pleased the Minister referred to that earlier, that the most important thing that South Africa got from the bank was knowledge. And we pride ourselves very much on being able to offer this sort of almost unique service of a combination of money and experience and knowledge. And if we don't have it ourselves, we can mobilise it from others. And part of the reason we're here is to build those kind of relationships so we can be more effective in that role. So how to get one's hands on the money. One of the reasons that I mentioned that it's difficult to work out what we're spending is often the money is invested through very narrow channels. Our Environment Department is spending money protecting natural resources in Africa. The big transfrontier parks, work is being done there, very solid infrastructure, big ticket items. On the other end of the extreme, we've got somebody advising a provincial government in India how to change their licensing structure so that people can get into business a bit more easily. It's a $100,000 engagement. These are engagements which have a massive sort of diversity, and it's very hard to kind of bring them all together in one strategic program. And I think the bank has been looking at this very closely, not just in tourism, but in many other industries, and trying to find out how we can be more impactful. And I think one of the messages that we're trying to develop in the bank to articulate more carefully and to help our clients articulate that more carefully is that we need to have an integrated kind of offer from the institution. It's actually quite ineffective for a Minister of Tourism to come to us and ask us for some small amount of money in a tourism sort of structure, and then the infrastructure ministers to come and ask us for that road or the airport. It makes it very difficult for us to put the strategy together that goes with the money, that mobilises any kind of transformational impact. That's not to say we're not having impact, but we really need you as our clients to bring that offer in a kind of more integrated way. And we're there very much to help you, by the way. We'd love to help you do that. But again, there's no point in coming to the technical experts. You have to come in the sort of front door of the bank. And the front door of the bank are the country departments, the country directories, and the people who actually make the decision. In the bank, we use this term, the envelope. You know, at the beginning of the financing cycle, you can imagine the country director is given the envelope. That's got the amount of money in it that they have to spend over the next several years. And to be honest, they don't care whether it's tourism. Well, they care whether it's tourism, I'm sure. But to be honest, they're rationalising that money. They're rationing that capital. And today in Nepal, when we argue that we think we need more money for tourism in Nepal, our country director is saying that's fine. Now, which part of the infrastructure program that I have do you think I should drop to put tourism in? Because I'm spending all my money, for instance, on hydroelectric power. Which of these people in Nepal do you think do not need electric light? That's a pretty hard argument to deal with. So we have to find a way to engage with those people. And to be honest, the technical experts in the bank are not the people to have that engagement. The people to have that engagement are you, the clients. We can help you do that. But we need to have that argument brought to us, I think, in a more integrated way. And to be frank, we need it, I think, more elevated as well. It just can't be coming in from sort of a junior response. We're quite happy to have the president of the bank kind of deal with these issues, but he needs to be able to deal with the equivalent sort of counterpart. There are several issues which I hope we'll get to about the difficulty of doing this. We're talking about mobilising large amounts of money. We know 7 out of 10 jobs in tourism are in SMEs. We know there's $1 trillion worth of unserviced capital demand in SMEs a year in tourism. That is an enormous amount of money. It just dwarfs all of the numbers we've been talking about. We need to find ways to get that money into the hands of those people. That's a very difficult challenge because of all the risk issues to do with that. Another issue that's important that I'd like to tell you about is data. You know, we have been talking about a lot of data, and one of the reasons I think tourism is hidden and buried in many of the places that we've been talking about today is there's not actually a particularly compelling argument that's been well articulated at the ground level. We all can tell you, it's like a mantra now, that it's 1 in 11 jobs and it's 10% of GDP and it's X% of, which are all very powerful and compelling arguments at a global level. But there is very little data at the destination level where we can draw that example and convince our country directors, the people who need to make those decisions, that if they invest in a destination, they're going to get a return that's measured in a reduction of poverty for all the people that live in that destination. If we can't find the answer to that question, we're never going to unlock that money. And that's why we need to work together to find a way to do that. We're working with the UNWTO now. We organised a conference in June in the bank last June to start addressing this question to see how we can much more effectively measure these impacts. Because at the moment, to be frank, we just don't have a solid enough argument. And I think that's one reason why the industry is not attracting the capital that it could be. Let me stop there and we can debate a bit more later.
We love your passion, John, and I think that we can all continue this dialogue bilaterally further down the line. Let me introduce you now to Maria Grappini. I think it was important not to speak only about official development assistance that is dedicated and allocated to developing countries from donors. I think it is as well important to speak of countries that are developed countries, and more importantly, many of our members come from the European Union. And I think that we would love to hear from you as a member of the Parliament and a former Minister of SMEs, Industry and Tourism, what it is that in this programming cycle we could look at. We will be producing at the end of the event a report in the weeks to come, and we will be uploading eventually indications, references that the speakers will have made so that you can retrieve as an information source if you are interested with.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. First of all, I thank you for invitation. I am honored to participate in my new quality as member of European Parliament, and I am a member in Committee of Tourism and Transport, and also in Committee for internal market and consumer protection consumers. I think it's for me it's a big pleasure because now I have something information, but I have a lot of papers here, don't presentation. I have something consideration. After the economic crisis of 2008, Europe is still the #1 tourist destination in the world, and the EU tourist sector has quickly recovered. I think it's very important because in tourism it's very quickly it's possible to starting new activity. And for Europe it's very important because after crisis it's still #1 tourist destination. Of course, the tourist sector needs the support of the Union of remain competitive in many EU programs. 2014-2020 are open for it. The EU provide direct funding through grants and indirect funding via financial intermediaries. Under the multi-annual financial framework for 2014-2020, new programs have been added while some of the 2007-2013 programs have been consolidated. For example, for instance, Erasmus Plus is the consolidation of 7 pre-existing programs. Similarly, Horizon 2020 combined the 7 framework program for research and the innovation-related activity of the competitive and innovation framework program. Most relevant program for the tourist sector in EU, 5 axes. First, it's area of structural fund, European Social Fund, European Regional Development Fund, European Territorial Cooperation. Second, area of environment, agriculture, marine and fisheries policies, LIFE, European Agriculture Fund for Rural Development, European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. Third, area of research, innovation and competitiveness, for example, Horizon 2020, COSME, program for the competitive of enterprise and SMEs. Fourth axis, area of culture and education, Creative Europe program, Erasmus, for example, for all programs. And last axis, area of employment, EU program employment.
Very important work for all of us of the World Bank and of the European Union is panel discussion. Now, with this, against this backdrop or having this in mind, I have pleasure now in introducing Mr. Pontus Orsted again. He is the chief of the Resident Coordinator's Office here in Colombia, in Bogota. Now, Pontus, the UN is turning 70 years. A lot has changed in the UN during the last decades. I understand that in the country, so most of our member states have UN field presences, if I may call it like this, in the format of resident coordinators. I understand the resident coordinator is the one ensuring the efficiency of coordinating all the UN offices that are present on the ground. Pontus, can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that works, and which kind of activities, how you identify the activities, and how they are financed on the ground, and what does it mean for member states?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll try to do this a bit of a reality check from a UN country operations and how we try to make things work on the ground. So, as you know, the UN development system, the part of the UN that deals with the development side, consists of several different agencies, different specialized mandates and capacities. And our main goal is to support governments or member states address the key development challenge in the country. So, in Colombia alone, we're 25 agencies actually. We're 22 with permanent presence. We're 25 development agencies with cooperation programs in Colombia. We stretch all the way from the humanitarian side, with the humanitarian assistance to ongoing humanitarian caseload that conflict generates, to human rights presence and monitoring and observation, and all the way to the very specialized development mandates and different kinds of those. We have about 1,700 staff at the moment, and 90% of those, though, are Colombian staff, and this is not uncommon in most of our country operations, and definitely not in middle-income countries such as Colombia. Now, one of our main important value added as the UN in Colombia and also in many other country presences is the field presence. We're not just working from the capitals. We have in Colombia 217 offices outside of Bogota. We have offices in Medellín, among others, covering 67 municipalities. And if you look at the project present investment that we do in the country, we're spread even further, and even reaching into this remote, marginal, fragile, conflict-affected regions of this country, and in many other countries where we're operating. Now, you made reference to the resident coordinator system. What we are implementing in all of our UN development systems present in the country is the delivering as one policy, and it's part of the UN reform. And it has 5 different ones attached to it. There's one leader, that's the UN resident coordinator. He's not necessarily the boss of the agencies. He's not the boss of the different agencies, but he is or she is the person who is in charge of coordinating and making sure that we have one coordinated leadership of the UN presence. We have one voice, not necessarily the voice of the resident coordinator, but a coordinated position and communications team. There's one operation, or should be one operation, one fund, or at least a coordinated budgetary framework between the agencies. And I think one fund, we're not yet there, and we'll discuss some of that. And very importantly, there's one program. And what does this one program mean? The one program is manifested as something we call the United Nations Development Assistance Framework, an UNDAF, for those of you who have had to suffer these processes. But the UNDAF is our overarching common strategy for development assistance and cooperation in any country. And we usually do it on a 4 to 5 year rotating basis. It's aligned with the development cycles of the country. It's done together with the country, the government, civil society, and other stakeholders, and it very much responds to and aligns with the National Development Plan. In Colombia, we just approved our UNDAF. We have an UNDAF that runs from 2015 to 2019. And we did that together with the Colombian government and our partners in civil society and here in the country. And we really try to focus down through these one programs on the most important development priorities that we see and we identify together with the government, coupled with where we have value added as the UN system. Where can we bring something that adds value to the national agenda? As we said, and very much as was expressed, I think eloquently by the minister from South Africa, our UNDAF has two main objectives and priorities. And the first one is to build peace, overcoming the armed conflict, and it's really through promoting non-violent resolution of conflict, strengthening local governance, protecting human rights, and restoring the rights of victims. And that is coupled with the second priority, and they're intimately linked, and we can't do one without the other, which is advancing sustainable development or environmentally sustainable development that reduces the social and geographic inequality. And as was expressed, we can't do peace without development, development without peace, and definitely for the tourism sector, both are absolutely critical. This is also very much expressed in the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, and we're very happy or pleased to work in a context where the Sustainable Development Goals agenda, what used to be called the post-2015 agenda, but we're now moving to looking at the 2030 agenda, is a core part of the development plan of the country. Colombia has been very active in shaping these 16 goals at the global arena, and has also been one of the first countries to incorporate it in its own development plan that was approved by Congress at the beginning of this year. And thus is also one of the first UNDAFs where we are incorporating the SDGs into our development cooperation. Just to round off, tourism is not explicitly mentioned in our UNDAF. And we can have some discussion around why or how come it's not there. It's a development priority. But as a strategy to achieve the priorities that we are after, and particularly the areas around peace building and rural development, it holds great potential for the country. And I would say that a lot of our work that we do in different projects or programs does end up influencing and strengthening the tourism industry. And we think that can be a very important tool to build both peace and development in Colombia.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have to speak from here, no problem. Well, thank you very much, Pontus, for this insights. I understand this UNDAFs, United Nations Development Assistance Frameworks, are a very important programming tool. But I understand also that out of our 156 member states, about 100 countries have these UNDAFs also in place. In about 50 cases, tourism is included in the UNDAFs. Can you maybe briefly outline, it's only a program is circling, so that the UN is responding with one program to the priorities, national priorities of the countries. But can you very briefly say, so let's say the Ministry of Tourism has some activities reflected in this UNDAF, but how they are financed? Where do you get the money from?
Yeah, so the UNDAF is not a financing instrument or a financing strategy of itself. It's a program strategy. It's a substantive strategy, if you so want. Currently, most of the funding for the projects or the agencies that contribute to the results in the UNDAF are channeled through bilateral agreements with different agencies. In our case, our UNDAF is about, the next one is about $1 billion over 5 years. Which is not huge, it's fairly small in comparison to the overall development investment of Colombia, of course. But 60 and 70% of that funding that goes through those bilateral channels are actually from national Colombian resources. And here's another point that was emphasized before. It's extremely important that development priorities that we support really have a national ownership and national leadership. And we think that this, the issue that the UNWTO, or the situation that our UNWTO is so will be so strongly financed through national resources is very positive. That assures us a government lead on it. Now, when we have the bilateral funding channels, or funding agreements to 25 different participating agencies, there is a significant risk of that we spread ourselves, we don't coordinate, we have certain levels of overlap, and we're trying to deal with that. But also for this reason, we're working quite strongly with the government and the country right now to find better mechanism, apply the best mechanism we have worldwide in terms of pooled funding or coordinated funding for the UNWTO priorities. And particularly, we're doing this in the peace building post-conflict result or priority of the UNWTO, and where it's expected that there will be some additional resources coming in if Colombia is successful in its peace process, and that can be very important. But to be able to make maximum use of these, ensure great impact, we do need to have better coordinated pooled funding mechanisms, such as multi-partner trust funds and so forth that we are using elsewhere in the world. We also want to bring to Colombia.
Thank you very much, Pontus. This is very helpful. I think that after the panel discussion, you're still a little bit around, Pontus, so that in case there are questions coming up. Of course, it would be interesting to see if for the UN here in Colombia, tourism is playing a role. As we know, the Colombian tourism sector is paying a lot of attention to the use of tourism as an instrument in building peace here, something that also UNWTO is very much interested in supporting. And based on that, we understand that the work on the ground, beside national resources are coming also from donor countries. I have therefore pleasure to come to my second panelist. It's Mr. Tatsuya Yanagi. He's the Deputy Director of the Private Sector Development Group in the so-called JICA. It's the Japan Development Cooperation Agency that is doing a lot of development aids. They are, in terms of volume, the 5th ranking according to the OECD Development Cooperation Report that was released last week. In 2014, Japan gave $9.2 billion in net ODA, official development assistance, meaning you are ranking 5th in terms of volume. Mr. Yanagi, a very warm welcome to Medellín. It's good having you here. I think it's also very important about hearing from you. JICA, what is JICA doing? What do you finance? How do you finance? Where are your priorities? And which role tourism is playing in all that?
Okay, thank you, Cordula. Pleased to meet you, everyone. I'm from JICA. Then I would like to firstly ask you one thing. Have you ever heard anything about JICA? Can you kindly raise your hand? Oh, thank you very much indeed. I don't know the reputation or popularity of my organization, so I should report back to my seniors. Okay, JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, which handles, let's say, ODA, Official Development Assistance, which is given by our government. As you can see on my presentation, we deal with bilateral funds. Not the multilateral funds, which is sometimes going to UN systems or World Bank as such. Then we handle 3 schemes, technical cooperation, and then also grant, then loans. We handle those 3 schemes. Then ODA is aiming to contribute to peace and development of our partner countries, so that Japan's own security and prosperity could be kept. That's our ODA is. Then JICA is in charge of handling those 3 schemes. And then we have over 150 countries, more than 100 offices all over the world. Then we are considered as one of the biggest bilateral aid agencies. Then the following slide will show you about what we consider tourism as a component of our development effort. This is our ultimate goal, supporting the poor through tourism development. This is our ultimate goal. Then we put 3 principles under that. Then promoting tourism development that benefits communities. Then the second is promoting public-private partnership for the tourism development. Then the third, mitigating negative impacts caused by tourism development. Those are 3 principles which we put in place. Then the followingly, we put 4 pillars for implementing project. The first one is supporting our partner countries to develop master plans. Before starting something as a project, we draw a picture together with our partners so that the project could be sustainable in the future. Then, as a menu too, we support our partners to develop the capacity of the institutions to have tourism, improving the surrounding environment. So under that line, we support our partners improving their systems or legal systems or stats or whatever. These are somehow similar to other partners like World Bank or GTZ or UN. Then the third pillar is formation and promotion of attractive tourist sites using culture and natural heritages. We try, together with our partners, to utilize the local resources. Then also supporting promotion and marketing, and then sometimes, if needed, supporting developing infrastructure, though it is handled by other ministries or other agencies sometimes. Then the fourth pillar is promotion of public-private partnership for the tourism development. Those are 4 pillars. And then let me just show you a small example. These are the pictures and then, which I took in March this year in Mozambique. The left part, upper picture, shows the agricultural producers. They produce the organic products, then start producing those, then supplying to the hotels or restaurants nearby. And then after gaining profit, they start investment and then plant cultivation by developing nursery or plants by themselves. And then their knowledges and experiences were shared with farmers nearby. Then the second picture on the right-hand side, those are mostly women in the villages, and then they make potteries. And then we support it, they improve the quality of their products, and then village tours they developed. And then those tours are introduced to the hotels nearby also. And then they share such knowledges with other villagers. And then the third one is a picture at the souvenir shop. They used to run their own shop individually, but we supported them to run it as a group. Then they were invited to the exhibition, and then they got so much orders, and then earned 400 times more than the previous year. And then what they said is, no more support of funds are needed, but tell us how to pay taxes, then to make bookkeepings, and tell us the opportunities of exhibitions. That's what they said. And then we would like to share our experiences with others. That's what our colleagues said on the ground. And then those are my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yanagi, I understand that you have also a project here in Colombia, One Village, right? What's the name of it?
One Village, one product.
Exactly. Can you maybe very briefly say?
Yes. Okay. Okay. One Village, one product is a kind of the initiative taken place in the rural areas in Japan in the past, and then this is sombrero developed by the villagers, and then I purchased it on Sunday when I visited there. Then we support the people to develop this kind of products, let's say, utilizing their resources, and then access to the market. We support them to do so, so that they get chances to the real money will be delivered, not through us, but by themselves. So we try to support such activities by themselves.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Yanagi. Mr. Yanagi, at the end, is there any key message you want to convey to the audience? These are very often people with whom you are working. Is there anything you want to say, a recommendation?
Yeah,
how to work with you?
I see several projects on the ground, and then I prefer to have a better coordination among the stakeholders inside the government, in each government, or in the local communities also, then streamlining those activities so that the beneficiaries could get more benefit efficiently and then effectively. So sometimes when we develop our project on the ground, we ask Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, we ask them to gather together.
I think that's more or less what Mr. Perotet from World Bank also conveyed to the audience, that this integrated approach to a donor, not to come with a single project idea or asking for support on something very small, but to be more integrated in the approach. I think that's, I understand from this conversation with you. Thank you very much for that. I then wish to move to my next panelist. It's our representative from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, Mr. Michel Duret. A very warm welcome to this panel discussion. Also, France is a very important donor. You gave last year 10.4 billion US dollars in net ODA, official development assistance. You are very strong with when we talk about supporting sustainable development issues, meaning you use the ODA in order to mobilize resources for sustainable development. You have a very strong focus also on climate change issues. And can you maybe a little bit elaborate for us on how you work, what their resources are, strategies, policies?
First of all, thank you to invite me to participate to this discussion in a so important topic. And as I do not have pictures to show, I'm going to be original and I'm going to do the presentation in French. As you say, avec 10,4 milliards de dollars d'aide publique au développement, la France se classe 4e en volume d'aide dans le monde et elle est le 2e contributeur au Fonds européen de développement. Cette aide couvre l'ensemble des pays bénéficiaires au fonds européen et elle vise plus précisément les 17 pays pauvres prioritaires. De plus, et afin de rendre réellement cette aide très importante en termes de volume, encore plus efficace, le Parlement français vient d'adopter une loi d'orientation et de programmation relative à la politique de développement et de solidarité internationale. Alors, elle constitue une première étape de la rénovation de politique de développement engagée en 2012. La nouvelle politique de développement de la France s'inscrit dans un cadre qui associe la lutte contre la pauvreté, le développement durable dans ses 3 composantes, économique, sociale et environnementale, dans la perspective du futur agenda post-2015. Alors, elle vise à répondre à 4 enjeux complémentaires dont l'évolution maîtrisée est importante à la fois pour la France, mais aussi pour ses partenaires. Alors, la promotion de la paix, la stabilité des droits de l'homme et de l'égalité entre les hommes et les femmes. C'est le premier point. Le deuxième, l'équité, la justice sociale et le développement humain. Le troisième, développement économique durable et riche en emplois. Ça, c'est un point qui est très important. Et préservation de l'environnement et des biens publics mondiaux. Alors, elle repose sur 3 grands principes directeurs, bien sûr, transparence, cohérence et concertation avec les sociétés civiles. Elle joue un rôle de plaidoyer aussi pour les bailleurs européens et contribue dans les situations de crise à la mise en place de programmes d'aide humanitaire. Alors, il y a un point ici très important, et le ministre des Affaires étrangères, Laurent Fabius, insiste souvent sur ce point, conçu dans une perspective réelle de continuum, urgence, réhabilitation et développement lorsque l'on parle de crise. Mais j'en reparlerai un tout petit peu plus tard, je suppose, si vous me posez la question. Certaines actions engagées par la France pour le développement concernent directement le tourisme, et ça c'est un point qui est important. Elles sont cependant plus difficiles à répertorier car elles sont très nombreuses et dispersées dans de nombreux outils financiers, mais je pourrais vous donner quelques exemples.
Can you, you mentioned tourism-related projects, so can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And you talked more about Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, but I understand that you have also the Development Agency of France in
Alors,
place.
le ministère des Affaires étrangères et du Développement international a une politique de coopération et de développement qui concerne directement ou indirectement le tourisme, ce que je disais tout à l'heure, car le tourisme inclusif et soutenable est identifié par le ministère comme un outil pour développer, pour favoriser le développement, et c'est pour ça qu'on a créé à l'intérieur du ministère des Affaires étrangères une unité tourisme. J'en suis le boss, je suis le responsable de cette unité, et c'est l'aide à la fois au tourisme. On la travaille directement depuis notre unité tourisme à l'intérieur du ministère des Affaires étrangères. Alors, de par les revenus et l'emploi qu'il génère pour les pays hôtes, c'est un point important, de par l'implication des populations locales dans les chaînes de valeur, le tourisme, s'il est inclusif et soutenable, a un impact positif qui converge vers les objectifs du développement durable et est identifié comme un vecteur de développement dans les débats en cours. Donc c'est clair que nous insistons sur ce point de façon permanente. Le ministère intervient en matière de tourisme durable et inclusif via le programme de renforcement des capacités commerciales, dont la mise en œuvre est confiée à l'Agence française de développement, dont je vais vous parler ensuite. Alors vous me demandiez quelques exemples, je vais vous donner des exemples. Par exemple, le projet d'appui à la structuration de la filiale tourisme au Cambodge, où on apporte 1,5 million d'euros en 2013. Le renforcement des capacités professionnelles des acteurs de la filiale tourisme et mise en tourisme de certains emplacements stratégiques à Saint-Louis, au Sénégal, auquel on a apporté 1 million d'euros en 2011. Le volet écotourisme d'un projet PRCC de 1 million d'euros au Vietnam en 2003. Donc ce sont des exemples précis d'aide avec des apports financiers. Le ministère, dans le cadre du programme national en faveur du commerce équitable de 2013 et 2017, soutient également le développement du tourisme équitable et solidaire à l'international. En appui financier à l'ATES, l'Association pour le tourisme équitable et solidaire, par l'Agence française de développement, on a apporté 245 000 euros sur 3 ans, et 2014 à 2016 pour le projet Amplifier le tourisme équitable et solidaire, facteur de développement des pays et des destinations, et du ministère pour une convention pluriannuelle de 2014 à 2016. Je vais donner encore deux exemples. L'appui au développement de la filière tourisme équitable à Madagascar, pour un apport de 60 000 euros, et dans le but de favoriser la mise en réseau des acteurs locaux du TES et de renforcer les capacités des acteurs développement par la TES. Et aussi l'atelier multi-acteurs organisé par le ministère et le PNU à Cap-Vert en 2014 pour la définition d'un plan d'action de tourisme. Mais le ministère, il a aussi une action directe en faveur du tourisme à travers les nombreux accords de coopération en matière de tourisme que nous signons avec des pays. Et nous avons ici la personne qui, dans mon équipe, se charge de construire ces partenariats, Daniel Kuss. Et ces accords gouvernementaux sont préparés et suivis donc, dans notre pôle. Pour plus d'efficacité à court terme, nous tentons chaque fois de créer des synergies avec les secteurs privés et de prévoir des actions de formation des populations locales au métier du tourisme afin de précipiter l'objectif de lutte contre la pauvreté. Donc c'est vraiment des collaborations qui vont de la formation à l'investissement et ensuite au suivi de projets. Certains services du ministère ont organisé, placés sous sa tutelle, ne sont pas identifiés tourisme, mais ont aussi une action en faveur de ce secteur. La direction de la coopération culturelle universitaire et de la recherche, qui participe à plusieurs projets, en Afrique en particulier, l'IRD, Institut de recherche pour le développement, mais aussi le Fonds de solidarité prioritaire qui permet de financer des interventions bilatérales au titre de l'APD sous forme d'aide à projets dans les domaines de la gouvernance démocratique, de la culture du français et de l'enseignement supérieur. Certains grands projets aussi organisés par le ministère ont un impact sur le tourisme, comme par exemple la COP21, maintenant qu'on appelle la conférence de Paris sur le climat qui aura lieu en décembre. Et bien sûr avec les différents impacts qu'il peut y avoir en termes touristiques. Et je dois citer également les actions menées par les différents services du ministère dans les situations de crise pour mettre en place des programmes d'aide humanitaire conçus dans une perspective de continuum, ce que je disais tout à l'heure, urgence, réhabilitation, développement, et qui font parfois une dimension tourisme à moyen terme quand elles touchent des pays dont c'est la principale source de revenus. C'est le cas quand il y a eu des tsunamis, et c'est le cas aussi, par exemple, en Tunisie, quand il y a eu des attentats.
Thank you very much. This is indeed very helpful, these explanations on the modus operandi of France. Is there from your side, Mr. Dorieux, maybe a message you want to convey to the audience?
Ce qui est important, c'est réellement de profiter du tourisme et de ses aides pour construire quelque chose de durable et sur du long terme. Il faut qu'on arrive à structurer le tourisme comme une aide permanente et une aide sur laquelle on va réussir à aider le pays à avoir ses propres financements. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut considérer que ces aides, au départ, sont des points de départ. Ce ne sont pas une fin en soi, donc il faut penser à l'après. Et justement, c'est pour ça que nous intégrons la formation.
Thank you very much, Michel. Very helpful indeed. I have time constraints here. That's why I will move after Michel. Thank you. My next panelist is Mr. Klaus Lengefeld. He represents the German Development Agency. In brief, we call it GITS, from GITS. Mr. Lengefeld, also to you a very warm welcome to Medellín. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Germany here. I understand that Germany is a very big donor. You are the third in volume also. And you're doing also some work in tourism, or how is this? What do you do?
Not really very much, but maybe I have some slides.
Yeah.
So,
green arrow.
The green, this one.
Yeah.
This is a little bit the picture that is symbolic to the development aid community and tourism. You see the development community, they're sleeping on the beach, and their tourism is coming very strong, very much increasing with all the positive and negative impact, and they are not aware of this situation, and so that's why they are not really helping tourism, and we need something to do to awake them, to go for influencing the tourism development in all over the world, and especially in developing and emerging countries. So Germany has two major components. What is JICA in Japan? We have separate organizations. The financial corporation is KfW, a bank. I don't give you the German word, it's difficult to pronounce. And they have DEG. DEG is the private sector investment. It's like IFC from World Bank. And they together get 2.5 to 3 billion euros a year. And they do investment, social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, mainly credits and grants. GIZ, my organization, we are called Technical Cooperation. So our main purpose is capacity development. We do not give credits and grants, only maybe in small amounts. And of course, we have some combined programs where KfW is giving the big money and we are giving the technical assistance. And there is a new player in the field, the Environmental Ministry of Germany, the BMUB in the abbreviation. They got from the emission tradings $200 million euros a year. They invest in developing countries, but only on biodiversity and climate change issues. There was 2 or 3 tourism projects in that portfolio, but very, very little. Now the question is, how much of this goes to tourism? And it's really a little bit disappointing. We have every year between 4 and 8 million in both agencies, KfW and GIZ. So this is 0.3% of the total cooperation budgets. It's similar as for the whole development aid community all over the world. And one problem we have, it's not in bigger projects, it's in 40 to 50 projects that have a small tourism component. So the average budget that each of those projects spends is maybe 0.1, 100,000, 200,000 euros a year. Only 10% of their budget. And this means, for example, a very clear indicator, we have only 2 tourism-only projects among the 2,000 plus projects of GIZ, and only 4 full-time GIZ tourism experts. I'm one of these. The 2 others are in the Danube Competence Center on the Balkans. And we have some 10 to 15 integrated tourism experts and some volunteers of the former DED, the German Volunteer Service. So it's really not very much. And what is very important also for the future, we have country and sector strategy papers, and in none of those tourism is explicitly mentioned. Okay, this is the current situation of tourism. It's very, very small in the development aid of Germany.
Klaus, you are telling us that tourism is not playing an important role. Does that mean that Germany does not recognize tourism as an important development tool, or why is it? And in order to increase the funding of Germany for tourism development, what to do?
I will give you some information of the reasons behind this absence of Germany in tourism development. And it is, I think, the reasons for Germany are similar as for any other development organizations. I put it in everybody is now liking on Facebook, so why is it not liked by the development community? It's considered like a luxury sector. If you look into farming, into economic development, this is essential, but tourism, it can be, but it cannot be. So it's considered, and often rather a threat to the basic needs, taking water, taking land from people. So it doesn't have a good image. And what is very important, there's an ideological barrier in the heads of the development community to accept that somebody who is on the beach, having all the food on the buffet, having all his leisure time and entertainment, this one is good for the next door community that is poor and lacking of all those resources. This is very difficult. There's a very strong ideological barrier that this cannot be good, the wealthy people in those poor countries. The third reason, and this is very important, there was always, you have negative cases of tourism development, fishermen taking away from the beach in Sri Lanka. We had a significant case that killed tourism and German Development Cooperation in the late 80s. There was an investment in a hotel in Dalyan Bay in Turkey. There was a turtle beach and a worldwide campaign, David Suzuki from Japan saying, oh, you cannot build the hotel there because the turtles. It's the best protected turtle beaches are where hotels take care of them, but it was not possible to break that prejudice. And from that time on, it was the only declared posteriority in German Development Cooperation was tourism. And we are still fighting to recover from that. And what is very important, that this is addressing the private sector here, they never had a strategy to prove with facts and figures how good they are, the real impact on poverty, nature, value added to nature and biodiversity, in order to become a legitimate partner for development aid. And one thing, I have a question here to the tourism ministers and the tourism ministry representatives. Who of you has ever been in a round of negotiations for bilateral aid with Germany or other country? Who was on the table when negotiating how to use the development aid? Can you please raise your hand, whoever has been in such a negotiation? Okay, this is which country? Zambia, okay. So they hardly are there because you have your colleagues from agriculture, from health, from energy. They have always received the development aid from Germany. They are in the priority paper for the country. So why should they let you in? Because as John said, if you take away money from their portfolio to tourism, they will lose. So there is also a competition in the countries, and tourism is very often the loser. And of course now the climate impact debate, because tourism for your countries mainly is long-haul flights, and this is another factor that makes you unattractive for development aid.
So you tell us that we are unattractive?
Some proposals
to you. Thank you. Thank you, Klaus. It means that we have to work with your government on changing this situation, I guess.
I have some proposals how to change this.
Yeah, okay, you want to tell us 2, 3 proposals, what we have to do and how we can help you.
What can we do in this situation? We have to, the first important thing, we have to win the battle for the public opinion by doing comprehensive independent studies on what is the real impact of tourism, and also address the decision makers for the allocation of development aid, because they are, if there is an NGO saying, oh, the fishermen, then they say, oh, we should not go for tourism in Sri Lanka because it's bad. So we have to win that battle, and that is very important. And the private sector is not contributing to that. We have to help tourism ministers to get access to the negotiations on development aid. And we have to create a critical interest groups of people like John, like those in the development organizations who are convinced, Franz, my colleague, who are convinced that tourism is a good investment of development aid, to join forces. And of course, we have to motivate the private sector tourism to cooperate with development organizations and to really become a partner of them. It doesn't need me to make the study of how good Marriott in Lima is, in Peru, to convince them. Even the Marriott people were surprised. They do not go public, they do not have any strategy to say, we are a good sector. And of course, we have to address the new challenges like climate change, green inclusive economy, to show how good tourism is for those priority areas of the development cooperation. Thank you.
That's very clear. Thank you very much, Klaus. Highly appreciate it. Very good. Now I wish to come to my last panelist, Mr. Asefa Kizito. He's the head of the office of the Minister of Culture and Tourism of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is recognized as a rising star among the new emerging tourism destinations. Kuoni just released a report and mentions Ethiopia as an emerging destination. A European Council of Travel and Tourism is an association of trade associations of tourism, just awarded Ethiopia as the world's best destination in 2015. World Bank data, UNWTO data proves this with increasing numbers of visitors to Ethiopia. Mr. Kizito, first of all, thank you for being with us. How can you explain this success? What did you do? How did you manage? And which role did the international community play in all that?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to convey the message from the government and the people of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia to all participants, to all UNWTO staffs. Happy Ethiopian New Year. Because we celebrated Ethiopian New Year last Saturday, September 12. That is September 1st for Ethiopia. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And in Amharic, please, Melkam Addis Amet. I think this has been said by all ambassadors in Addis Ababa on Saturday, last Saturday. Melkam Addis Amet in Amharic, Happy New Year in English. Yes, after saying this, well, I think it has been said, tourism is a rising star in Ethiopia. But as you know, Ethiopia is blessed with abundant tourism destinations, tourism attractions, of which 9 of them are inscribed in World Heritage Sites, and 5 in the waiting list by UNESCO. But tourism has been recognized as one of the economic sector pillar recently by the government, and it has been named green economy. Now, this has been proclaimed by the government. Tourism is a green economy whereby we develop. So really, it is an infant industry, infant sector for us, but it is rising. We can say it is on the right runway, but about to take off. I hope within the coming 5 years, Ethiopia's tourism sector will fly throughout the world. This is what I want to say, because we have GTP2 now, meaning growth and the transformation plan 2, which ran from 2015 to 2020. Therefore, we can say in Ethiopia, tourism is a rising star. So Ethiopia achieved this because of political will and commitment of the government, one, and right policies and the directions adopted by the government, and institutional setup in place. And all these are most of the factors underlying factors for such success. To mention some, when you come to appropriate policy, I think the government has recognized now onwards tourism as one of the economic pillars for growth and for creation of jobs in the country. This is one. Next to this, one of the important policy measures taken by the government is, under the leadership of the Prime Minister, Tourism Transformation Council has been established at federal level, at regional level, at zonal level, and at district level. As you know, Ethiopia is a federal state, and we have Tourism Transformation Council throughout the country, across the country, whereby both private and the public actors come together, and where the government has been able to establish what to call public-private partnership in the field in the tourism sector. So this is one of the achievements of the government by creating public-private partnership in the tourism sector. Again, the government has brought culture and the tourism together and created the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, where culture is headed by one state minister and the tourism sector is headed by another state minister. And we have 7 agencies, affiliate agencies, specialized agencies for tourism and culture. Again, we have workable laws. So far, the government has issued 4 proclamations, 7 directives, and some 14 regulations in the field of tourism and culture. And as a result, tourism is flourishing in Ethiopia. So this is the commitment of the government and policy decision, legal framework, and institutions are the underlying reason for success of Ethiopian tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Casito, for outlining that, how you did it actually, how you were so successful in building up, I think, what you have now, a solid tourism structure in place in your country. Congratulations again on that. I also, like I asked my other panelists, also wish to ask you, what is the message to the audience? What do you want to convey?
Thank you very much. in this regard, now our GTP2 is in place. GTP2 means growth and the transformation sector, which runs for 5 years from 2015 to 2020. Now, in this plan, tourism has been given wide space so that during this plan, our vision is just to see Ethiopia one of the top 5 tourist destinations in Africa by 2020. To achieve this, we have some sort of projects designed by the government. One is tourism infrastructure development and expansion is one of the projects we have. The second is integrated cultural heritage development for tourism is the second. The third is tourism product development. And to run this, we need 226 million Ethiopian birr. 226 billion Ethiopian birr, or 4,520 USD. So today I'm lucky because JICA and the GIZ are with me. I know JICA and the GIZ are strongly working in Ethiopia in other sectors. In other sectors, I know very well, but they are not engaged in tourism sector. I hope they promise here that they will engage in tourism sector. So now I would like to call upon all participants, all tourists to visit Ethiopia. Because Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, particularly coffee Arabica, where the name coffee has been derived from the place called Kaffa in the south region. So you can visit that area, one. Second, Ethiopia is a cradle of human being, where Lucy, 3.2 million years old, has been discovered in Afar. And so Ethiopia is also blessed with abundant tourist attractions, so that visit Ethiopia is one. The second message is internationally in finance institutions to support Ethiopia in its endeavor to develop tourism. So this is, and finally I would like to call all investors to invest in Ethiopia to benefit from tax exemptions and free importation of vehicles if you invest in star-designated hotels. And I think at this point what I want to raise is, well, the World Bank is working with us. It's financing our endeavors, our efforts, and UNWTO is supporting us, particularly technically, so that I would like to call upon World Bank and UNWTO to continue supporting Ethiopia. And I think this is very important for us. We will continue to work. And as I raised before, one of the activity we are undertaking is hotel classification. In Ethiopia, hotels have been classified by the owners themselves. Now, we are implementing mandatory hotel classification, star hotel classification, in collaboration with UNWTO and World Bank, so that we'll continue this. It is, I say deliberately, it is mandatory classification. We have the law, we will implement the law so that this will also help our tourism development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very good promotional speech also. We definitely shall come and visit Ethiopia soon. Thank you, Mr. Kesito, for being with us. Then I wish to just say thank you to all panelists. Mr. Kesito, that's for you. The panelists, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. And I have pleasure in giving the floor back to our very lovely Master of Ceremony. Anita, please, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Cordula. And thank you very much to the panel for really adding in more practical value. I think what's been lovely about the last two panels is it shows very clearly that the UNWTO has become a vehicle for providing very clear direction and guidelines around strategy development, but also finding the funding mechanisms to support development in a way that is integrated, and it's not tourism only. It's leveraging the entire value of driving tourism to drive overall economic development and sustainability. What we want to do then is have a little look at, but then what is the UNWTO looking at going forward? How are they going to take all of this knowledge, all of this insight, all of these partners and all of these opportunities and apply it into the way forward with respect to the UNWTO? To give us a first look at that, I'm going to ask a very dear man from the UNWTO and a real resource for us in terms of being able to make those mechanisms come to life, to give us a brief word, please, on what really is the way forward for the UNWTO. Please, can you all join me in welcoming Mr. Xu, who is the Executive Director of Technical Cooperation and Services at the UNWTO. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Anita told me time is very limited, so I try to make it as quick as possible. So today, Secretary General and other speakers have already emphasized upon the significance of tourism. So I don't think I need to say something more. So I wish to inform you that from the point of view of the technical corporations, UNWTO projects and missions are implemented to optimize the sector's social and economical benefits, to reduce poverty and promote sustainable tourism, and also livelihoods, and preserve and conserve the natural and cultural heritages. I must say that the success of technical cooperation depends entirely on the availability of external financial resources. We face several challenges in extending our technical assistance to our member states, but the biggest of them is a resource constraint, which is mainly due to the lack of awareness of the importance of tourism. In the national planning of the governments, tourism is not given the priority it deserves, while the sector is not included in the program of the donors. As you can see on the screen, in spite of the limitation of resources, UNWTO has extended technical assistance to its member states on a wide variety of subjects. 15 technical cooperation projects, 34 technical missions, and 95 STEP projects. Thanks to the donor partners, we deployed a total of $23 million for those activities. While much has been done, a lot more could have been done if sufficient financial resources are available. Next. Under the technical cooperation, we implemented country-specific and regional projects. Let me give you brief examples of both. In Ethiopia, the World Bank-funded project is in progress, which focuses on the hotel classification and the training of inspectors. For the project in Uganda, we have partnered with UNDP, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Uganda Tourism Board to extend our technical support for the development of inclusive markets for tourism, which included business development services, marketing action plans, and capacity building activities. With the support from GEF and in collaboration with the UNWTO and UNEP, we implemented a regional project in Africa, which benefited 9 countries. The focus of the project was on capacity building on ecotourism and livelihoods, and implementation of ecotourism projects on sustainable development and governance and management. Thus, through a single project, 9 member countries received our technical assistance. As I said earlier, a lot has been done, but we do need external financial resources to extend our technical assistance to our member states. This is important since we are diversifying and broadening the scope of our technical assistance by adding new areas which are of concern and interest to countries. Some of those areas include capacity building through e-learning, marketing with a focus on social media, quality control, and standards. Next. Through this important event today, I would very much urge the donor communities to provide their support for development through tourism. At the same time, I would call upon the member states to advocate the case of tourism and have it included as a majority priority sector in the national development agendas. They should also make efforts to broaden the donor base by taking advantages of the cross-cutting nature of tourism and linking it to the projects of related sectors such as environment, culture, trade, and human resources. Thank you very much for the briefing.
Shishia, Mr. Zhu, and I must say, he didn't even flinch when all of the technical operations are going on behind him. I'm extremely impressed with that. Thank you very much for that perspective. I'd like to now ask Mr. Marcio Favilla to come up. He's our Executive Director of Operational Programs and Institutional Relationships at the UNWTO. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anita. We are blessed to have Anita as our Master of Ceremonies, and it was said earlier that she was in love with the Secretary General, but she is also in love with tourism, and that has been great for us. We know that tourism has grown in numbers in international arrivals, and domestic tourism has also grown exponentially since these measurements have been taken. So we've come from very small figures to more than 1 billion international arrivals per year. We see that we estimate that by 2030 there will be 1.8 billion international arrivals. Our estimates are that domestic tourism also moves every year about more than 6 billion domestic travelers, and from tourism we know all those big figures. So what we also see that there is a growing importance, not only growing importance of tourism in developing countries, and developing destinations are growing in numbers and also in quality. They are providing more opportunities, more options for people to travel from developing countries, but also from developed countries. Now, do we want just to talk about growth? Obviously not. We want to see development, and not only growth, but development. And we've seen here in all these, in the panels, these two panels today, with our great three introductory remarks that we had from the Secretary General, from the head of ITC, and from the Good Minister of South Africa, the importance of tourism. They've given us the backgrounds for our work in the future. But I would also like to remember and bring to all of you the fact that tourism, and it's very clear from our discussions, tourism is far from being recognized as for the importance it has. Now, are we better off today than we were a few years ago? I think so. I think the awareness and the acknowledgement of the importance of tourism as an instrument for development, but not an end to itself, is better today. And one clear example is the fact that we have tourism in 3 of the 17 SDGs. Now, tourism we've seen here is hidden. It's not only money that is hidden, as John from the World Bank said, and we also heard from Madame Grappini from the European Commission, but tourism is also hidden in all development plans, in most development plans of countries, is hidden in the priorities of the donors, because tourism is not well understood. There is an issue problem. There is an image issue here for tourism, and that has come out from our discussions. But tourism, let's say positively, is also hidden in the 17, in the other 14 SDGs. You may have seen, you may have received this pamphlet here that we prepared, and here we bring the connection in a very short, in a very summarized way, the connections of tourism to each one of the 17 SDGs. So what do we have to do for tourism to be more recognized, better recognized, and people not to be ashamed or being accused of supporting tourism? Yes, we have to work on the data, we have to work on the analysis, we have to continue with and strengthen our advocacy work with all the private sector, with our private partners, with developmental partners as well. Now, one point that to me that has also come very strongly is that countries that want to develop tourism, especially we are talking about developing countries, they have to have their strategy. They have to have clarity on what they want to do. Tourism will continue to grow no matter what, but that we don't want. Tourism is an instrument, is not an end to itself. So tourism, as the Minister of South Africa said, tourism has to be part of the development strategy, but countries have to be in the driving seat. They have to know what they want, but they have also to have a constructive dialogue with donors, with development partners. They have to gain from the knowledge that the development partners, donors, have accumulated over time. So for us, that aspect is very important, and this is precisely one of the objectives of this session here today. We have brought development partners, we have brought experience from Ethiopia. There is much more in terms of experience. UNWTO has its own experience in providing technical cooperation, but we are here also to bring the information to our member states. There is a lot from different donors, but it's clear for us here that we have to do, we can do, and we have to do much more in terms of our advocacy, which should be a joint advocacy with all development partners. So in order to conclude, our way forward is really to continue to work together in order to show that tourism is an instrument for sustainable development. It is a sustainable development through tourism that we want. It's not tourism growth for the sake of tourism growth, but rather to be an instrument for the achievement of the development objectives of each country. It's very clear from also from the testimony of Madame Do here from Korea, that to overcome development challenge is possible. It is at hand, and tourism is an instrument for that. So I'm very thankful to all panelists that have been able to come and accepted our invitation. And there is no better way to end our afternoon than inviting Colombia, inviting Vice Minister of Sandra Howard Taylor to speak to us on Colombia and her vision on tourism development for the future. Thank you very much.
It is really a disadvantage to be the last one on the floor. However, I would just want to start where Marcio left the conversation, and I totally agree that this is no longer anymore about growth. It's not as simple as that. It's not even about development. When we're talking in tourism, it has to be sustainable development. And I think our countries, our developing countries, must have a serious agenda about this topic. Some of us tried first steps in preparing ourselves for the sustainable development objectives, and we've been able to leave a print in our development plan for the country the following 4 years so far. But I'm sure there are other countries that are still just beginning to analyze how we are going to face these challenges. In countries like Colombia, money is not abundant, but we know that resources can be. So we have to get creative, be very innovative, and come up with ideas that will allow all stakeholders of the tourism to put on the table. In that case, we, as the government agencies, are promoting incentives that will get the private sector very interested in investing in tourism and sustainable development for our regions. The way to do that is by creating the right environment. We are not able to assume all the responsibility, but we must take care of the general infrastructure. But through private investment, we can also contribute to those other aspects where it can and must become an interesting business for them. That way we assure not only a successful growth of tourism, but also sustainable development for the people. That's what we are doing currently in Colombia through private-public partnerships. And I just want to bring your attention to a specific case when it comes to hotels, for example. Our National Fund of Tourism, FONTUR, has been giving the task to administrate those hotels that through our past has been seized by the government. And instead of becoming another weight on our shoulders, we are turning them into business opportunities by offering them for private investment. We have a specific case that I would like to mention here, and then we're talking about Hotel El Prado, which is a national monument hotel because of its architecture and the role it played in the history of Barranquilla, one of our most important cities of the Caribbean coast. It's also been seized, like I said, so now it is officially in the government's hands, and we now just offered it for a 30 years administration to a private group that wants to invest in this hotel. That way, we were expecting to have a bid for 41,000 million pesos, which is like roughly $15 million. And this private initiative is multiplying that figure by 4 times. So we're not only maintaining the historical building,
promoting growth in the hotel infrastructure and tourism of the area, but we're also enhancing the original bid, going into not only hotel, but also a commercial development of that whole block, and also health institution that is going to be established in that place. So it is an example of how we turn something that was becoming a burden for us, because we are not administrators of hotels. We don't know to run hotels, but the law gave us that responsibility, and we turned it into an opportunity. And like that, we are doing something similar with other projects that has this good business profile that makes it interesting for other people. I just wanted to mention that, like I said, as an example, but I think we have to take it to another level. For us as official, as the government officials, I think they don't quite believe us enough when we go to fight for budget with our colleagues from other ministries. So I believe it's time for UNWTO to help us host a meeting similar to what we had yesterday with ICAO, where we meet with our partners in transportation and civil aviation. And we showcase the importance of working together for both of us benefit. I think the ministers of financing need to be brought to a meeting like this for them to completely understand how important our sector is for the development of our countries. That way, they would not continue looking at us as our friends from Germany mentioned, the donors don't quite appreciate this sector. Sometimes I feel some of our colleagues in the cabinet don't quite appreciate how important our job is for communities' development. And I think a meeting like what we're having here this week will certainly open eyes and help understand how strategic our job can be for the development of our countries. But I would certainly urge UNWTO to help us in that direction, because some of them might know it, but it would be very good if they hear it from someone else as well. So they understand it's not just the nagging of the people from the tourism sector, but it is a true need of an entire community around the world that know how important tourism is to develop our regions. And I will not extend, because I know Anita can be terrible if I run over my time, but I would like to finish here with bringing back Richard Quest's questions yesterday. And I think, yes, we need, as public officials, to make sure we get on that table of negotiations. And not only that we participate there, but we lead those discussions. And personally, well, we are going to embark on that task. And I certainly invite my colleagues to do the same. It's not going to be easy, but no, the answer no is already given. We can only go for the yes. So that's what we have to do. And yes, we must be taken seriously, as Mr. Taleb Rifai said here today. Thank you very much. And once again, thank you for coming to Colombia and sharing all your experiences with us.
Gracias, Sandra. I must say, we talk about the richness that we have in travel and tourism, and we often speak about it being about the people. And the lovely Vice Minister of Tourism of Colombia, Ms. Howard, is one of those perfect examples of our people really are our greatest resource. And you have taken care of us, you brought us to your home. We are eternally grateful, and we really are in a complete agreement that we need to make sure we're all at the same table. And considering how much work is taking place at the General Assembly, if you can please continue to provide the Colombian coffee, we will all be stronger for it. So thank you for that. Before I wrap up, I have a request from His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya, who would like to make a quick word, and then I'll do the closing addresses and thanks before we head out and before our microphones are cut. Sir, please. We will get you a microphone. Great. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you all the participants here today.
This I consider a very successful forum. Anyone who was participating in the Africa Commission meeting 2-3 days ago, where there was a desire that there be a joint approach to tourism financing and development between the UNWTO and the development partners, and more importantly, the World Trade Organization. If that person had attended and was here today, would really be delighted that the Director General for, the Executive Director of the International Center for Trade, the comment she made really give us hope that we are going somewhere, and may I therefore congratulate ourselves for the good work that has been done this far. Now, going forward, for us to implement the financing of tourism for development program effectively, as has been well captured by the Executive Director, Mr. Vafia, I see that there is hope because the Minister for South Africa said one of the key sources of finances will be the local national resources. 2, we've heard from the World Bank and other donors that there are resources available, but they finance projects which address tourism, but it's not directly tourism. Nobody recognizes that we are addressing tourism. Now, there is an evident fear that emerged that we cannot finance tourism because of what it is not, as came out earlier. But I see a hope that if, as has been promised by the Executive Director of the International Center for Trade, if we have that function in Nairobi where the World Trade Organization is going to have, hopefully, a slot to discuss tourism as an important factor in development, then I can see the greater opportunity in this sense that we can use that forum to bring together interested governments that may want to undertake a model that will demonstrate that tourism financing is possible, and that whatever we are doing is aimed at also developing tourism. Now, how do we do this? We have to ask this question. How do you make the various development partners, government and other civil society, private sector come together so that they can realize that whatever they are doing is contributing towards tourism? That's question number 1. And how do you make the UNWTO and World Trade Organization partnership that is emerging really make us realize that what we are working towards is actually, whatever we are doing is financing development? I want to propose this, that in the meeting that we are going to have in Nairobi, we invite key government institutions, countries and government institutions, whether it's infrastructure, whether it is environment or whatever, to participate in that meeting. In that meeting, I want to propose that you come up with a model of how one can visualize that what they do is indeed developing also tourism.
Absolutely.
3, we may need to come up with a motivator. A motivator in the form of a pilot project, where willing countries may want to bring together various partners to demonstrate through a pilot project that whatever they are doing is tourism development. And then we ensure that every 2 years, I think the World Trade Organization meets every 2 years, that every 2 years we have that same slot where the invited countries, so the pilot countries, come to present their report of how well they have worked.
Absolutely,
yes.
absolutely.
And then that way we will be able to continuously, by the year 2030, we will have changed the mindset of those who think that whatever we are financing is not or whatever we're doing is not tourism related.
Absolutely, and I think what's lovely, Honourable Your Excellency, is that you've extended the invitation.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely a conversation that needs to continue with the UNWTO to leverage that opportunity in Nairobi when everyone is sitting at the table. So thank you very much for that intervention.
Thank you.
Before we actually say our goodbyes, I'd like us all to please give a very special thank you to Dave Honeck, the Councillor of Trade and Services from the World Trade Organization, who has actually been our rapporteur for this session. We are very, very grateful for his support and thank him for all of the participation that he's given. So thank you very much for your participation, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this closes our special event. This has been incredibly valuable, and the fact that we have people behind you all that you actually can't see trying to get me to cut, but people still want to keep talking, says how this conversation has not ended. It has for the moment, and we thank everyone for your participation. This clearly is a dialogue we need to extend to our partners in trade and continue. The UNWTO is there to support that conversation for all of you, but thank you very much for giving your time, your insight, your energy. We look forward to seeing you again. Enjoy the rest of the General Assembly. God bless and take good care.